Hi, Jegaysus.
Hi, heathens.
Hi, friends.
Welcome back to another episode of the Unholy Trinity, where you come for the gospel, stay for the gossip. So today we have a very special guest. He is actually, I believe, one of my sort of oldest TikTok acquaintances. I think so. It's been a long time. You might know him as the SkepTick. You might know him as the British voice in a circle. No. But now he's off of TikTok, and he has a very successful YouTube channel where he sort of combats silly arguments. But I will let him tell you more about himself. So, John, the SkepTick, why don't you tell us sort of how you got here, who you are, what it is you do?
Right. Well, so I'm a professional British voiceover that lives in America now. And before I moved here, I was like, I know that I'm moving to one of the most religious countries in the world, and I struggle with the whole concept of religion. I was never brought up as a believer in a deity. I grew up as a spiritualist. Well, my mother was a spiritualist, and that was kind of what I was taught. But I find the arguments really quite silly, and knowing that I was coming to one of the most religious countries in the world, I decided that I needed to do something that would help me get out my atheism, and like I could deal with being an atheist by creating content on YouTube, which is how I initially started. And I just like to point out really silly things that people say. I'm not a very clever person. I'm British, so I sound more intelligent than I actually am. I don't know anything. But so I like to take a basic look at what people say about belief in a deity, or where Jesus was born, or why evolution is, doesn't exist, or something like that. And I point out the silly things that are fairly obvious to someone who doesn't know a lot about religion. So that's kind of where I went, and I started back in March 2021, and it took me like 9 months to get to 1,000 subscribers, and then by the end of January this year, 2022, it just blew up, and I was getting subscribers in the thousands every week. So it's doing fairly well now. I've got like 16,000 subscribers, which isn't huge in the grand scheme of things, but it's like a significant amount of people for someone who doesn't know very much.
I think actually that might be a benefit, not knowing very much, because I think oftentimes I know I can do it, and I'm not even like I don't have a formal Bible like degree or anything. I just happen to know a lot about it because I've done so much reading and research. And you can get real into the weeds with people, and they're just like, what are you talking about, right? Unless you're talking to, like, an apologist or somebody, even if you're talking to an apologist, sometimes they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. But, like, when you're talking to someone, just your average day-to-day person, I am trying to tell them everything I've ever learned and how it all fits, because, like, I've spent all of this time reading and researching, and they're like, what? I don't. Yeah, make it interesting. Put it in terms I understand. And I'm like, no, I can't. But here's some church signs. Just kidding.
Those are hilarious as well. Absolutely hilarious.
There's such a value for channels like yours because, as Jess was explaining there, like, so often if we dive ourselves into the weeds, we'll make a big deal about, like, a Hebrew word here, or this and that, and then people like yourself get to show up and say, yeah, that's all great, guys, but have you thought about how it's stupid?
Yeah, exactly that.
Have you thought about how it's stupid? That is silly to believe that.
Yeah.
And we need more of that in the world, because it is so easy to get bogged down because there's too much information.
Right.
So thanks for pulling us back up to the surface for some air.
There you go. Well, and that's kind of what I like to do. I like to think of myself as the first rung on the ladder of like losing belief and moving away from strange beliefs, because I don't understand a lot of the big words that people use, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to know them. I don't. So this is silly because X, and that's what I love doing. And I spend hours trawling through the internet looking at like a video that I go, I could probably do something with this. I just love doing it. I love it.
I just wanted to ask, for your full-time gig, or is this it's just something you do on the side still?
essentially, I'm starting now to earn more through YouTube and all of the things that come along with it than my regular jobs. I'm probably, actually, well, maybe 50-50. I'm probably earning as much through YouTube and the things that come with it as I do in my everyday life as being a voiceover. So,
How cool.
yeah,
Cool.
it's definitely getting there. Yeah.
So you say you spend a lot of time going through, trudging through the interwebs and whatnot.
Right.
What would you say is like an ideal video for you, where you're just like, bingo, that's the one that really sparks your interest in something that needs to be addressed?
I mean, I really enjoy, like, just a man sitting in a garden talking to a camera. And it doesn't have to be a very well-known person. There was one guy maybe it was a couple of months ago now, and he kept coming onto my videos saying, this is the truth about science and God, and you should check out my 2 videos. And I kept putting it off and going, this guy is just trolling me. I'm getting like 14 comments a day from him. One day I just clicked on his channel, and it was just this sweet little old man with a pair of glasses and a leaf blower going on in the background, and he just said some very, very random things, and I kept just, like, I stopped the video every couple of minutes and said to my wife, this guy is saying some really weird stuff. I think I'm going to do a video on him. And that kind of video is my goal. That's what I'm looking for on the tubes. Not necessarily, because there's some big names, your Kent Hovins, who, I mean, they're all low-hanging fruit, but even so, the Kent Hovins, Ray Comfort, I do like doing those videos, but I like the people that aren't known, and focusing in on them. What
has been like the craziest sort of argument or like evidence that people have tried to use? I know there's a lot. I know. Trust me, I know.
Yeah, where do you start with that?
I'd say, do you have a favorite, or like, maybe the most repeated one? Even what would be the?
God.
I mean, it's all essentially the same argument, just with different words, and it's difficult for me to then find new different words to refute the same arguments in a slightly different way. I had one a couple of weeks ago, and maybe no, it was a couple of weeks ago. A lady called Kat Kerr, who she claims she's actually been to heaven. And that was one of my favourite. She's so strange. But I loved that video just because I had a great time just talking about why it's silly that she goes to heaven and why she didn't take a phone with her and, all these random things.
That lady is nuts.
I love the evolution stuff, but I'm not as well versed in like the big, words in biology. But I can conceive it in my head of how evolution works, but I'm not very good at vocalizing it. So I enjoy those videos, but I have a hard time saying what I want to say, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm the same way, especially with evolution, or if we start talking about like astrophysics and the Big Bang, I'm like, okay.
Sure.
A little out of my depth. I get it in theory, but I cannot explain it to you, sir.
Right. And that's why I like pulling in other people. And I've made a goal this year to do a collaboration every month with a different YouTuber to try and, I'm learning so much doing all this, but I like my viewers who also may be in the same boat as me to learn some things. So if I find it interesting, I'm sure they will as well. And that's like what YouTube's about anyway, isn't it? So.
Yeah.
I thought it was particularly interesting just a moment ago where you said, well, it's all the same arguments just with different words. And that's what it is, isn't it? It's not people find themselves going, oh, I had this deep fidelity to this argument or to this logic. Because to a certain extent, it's just, what can I grab up that I can use to spray like a defense of my worldview and just put all of that in place. It's just, and that I think was, so I was raised in a conservative Christian world, and they did like apologetics segments at the youth events that they would send us to.
Wow.
On like evolution, and what's really interesting is some of the best rhetorical devices I ever learned about debunking came from those spaces, even to this day. Some of the best ones. But they just turned them in a different direction. And so we would have, like, sometimes it'd be science, sometimes it'd be homosexuality, sometimes it'd be physics. But at the end of the day, it was all just, let's just touch every space that we can with a reinforcement
Right.
of our worldview, rather than some kind of fidelity to science or some kind of fidelity to human sexuality or some kind of discipline in any of those things.
I was going to say, the
I'll
only
let you go.
fidelity that people have, just as basically Andrew was saying, is to being right. Especially
Yeah.
in evangelical circles. I mean, it's not just evangelicals. Of course, it's lots of Christian denominations. But speaking from experience, the only thing that they have fidelity to is power. And in order to have power, you have to be right. And you have to, and if you're right, then you can control. And so even though when we see these silly arguments, yeah, they're really silly, and I agree, and you're seeing it like, this is so whatever, but like, it is deeply, not to take this away from being fun, but it's deeply rooted in the need to be right so that they can have power and they can control other people.
I find there's a heck of a lot of power in saying I don't know, and that's been very freeing.
Yeah.
Over the last few years, because
Absolutely.
it is more accepted to say I really don't know, and people actually accept that and go, well, good for you for actually admitting that you're not making something up. You know, you're comfortable in saying I don't know.
Not Christians.
Yeah. Well,
I have a question. Has anyone seen that video with I can't remember his name, the apologetics preacher who goes in as a atheist to that college campus and he debates the Christian college students as an atheist?
No.
It has like 4 million views on
No.
YouTube. It reminded me of what Andrew was just talking about right now, because he's kind of attractive, but he's one of the leading apologists right now. He's like, 30s, 40s. And he has glasses, but he goes around all these Christian campuses, and I guess this is just the first one they recorded. Usually he tells them up front, like, I'm an apologetics professor, and I'm going to present to you, like, atheist logic. And he didn't on this one specific video, and then they posted it to YouTube, and then at the end he's like, I'm a Christian, I'm actually a professor. But the whole time, every single point was dead on, and I'm just like, yeah.
But
wouldn't you
and I
think
didn't
he'd
realize
listen
until
to
the
that
end of
and
the
go,
video either.
Wait,
okay,
And
maybe
then
I
I
do
was
need
like,
question.
but how is he still an apologetics teacher? He had it
Sean
so dead
McDowell?
right.
Sean
Sean
McDowell is the
McDowell,
one doing
yes.
this?
Yes.
What? Wow.
I hate that guy.
Okay, I'm learning.
I was
so
like,
much.
I know
you're
you know
listening.
who he is.
I hate
even though
you.
you haven't seen it. You should watch it. His arguments pro-atheism are great.
I mean,
Wow,
I'm
he
sure
is
they
very
are.
attractive.
okay.
That faux hawk has
I
got to
told you
go.
he's attractive.
It's got to go.
No, it's I don't know what it is. I don't know when this started happening in like men's fashion, where they're like, whatever shape my chin is, I'm gonna make my hair do the same thing in the opposite direction. And like I don't know when that started. I appreciate it a lot. It's so back to Jegaysus, what you said a second ago. The whole this will have to be cut.
Christians
so this-
debating apologetics.
Apologetics. We had a professor at my undergrad. That he never talked about whether he was a Christian or an atheist or a skeptic or anything. But what he would do is he would just present arguments vehemently from whatever perspective, and he was really damn good on all fronts. And it was just so. At first, it was impressive because you're young. You walk in, you're like, oh,
Right.
look at this this command you have over ideas, and then eventually you go, you just know what to say without actually ever tying it to your person. It never connects with you as an individual. It's just whatever argument works. And I think that's the hard part about Christian apologetics is that it on a fundamental level, when it takes one step past faith and one step past like belief, it never has to do with like what am I convicted by as a human being. It is what can I do to tear down your ideology enough so that you may be compelled by what I'm compelled by. And that is such a hard thing to deal with, and that's why I appreciate debunking apologetics. That's fun for me personally because it's just like, these people should not be weaponizing rhetoric, and so can we just pull that back? And if you can do that with some fun along the way, and make people laugh along the way, then that makes
And have an accent. Accents help.
That helps.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
doesn't
I
hurt.
found that helped. Yeah. I enjoyed that. I enjoy having an accent just for that.
Yeah. So I won't
Enjoy having
totally like out you, but when you said you're moving to like the most religious country in the world, yes. I'm not going to say where he lives, but I will say, good Lord, you could not have picked a more religious person
super
if you tried.
conservative.
Yeah,
My
I've
God.
said on my channel
no.
that I live in Kentucky, so it's fine. You can say
Okay.
I live here. I don't say where in Kentucky, but yeah, no, I live in Kentucky. I live in the very north of Kentucky, and actually the town that I live in is quite progressive. There's actually a group of atheists. There's a big group of atheist folk around
only
here
one
who
in the
openly
state.
talk about it. So, yeah, probably is. But yeah, no,
Who will openly talk about it?
I picked Kentucky because my wife is from Kentucky, so it's not like I went, I'm just going to pick that one.
Go there.
There is a reason that I'm here.
I was gonna say the rent prices are probably better than, say, California. So even if you did
Fair.
pick it like that, that would make sense.
Fair, right?
So, does your wife have a Northern Kentucky accent?
Yes, yeah, she does.
What does your child sound like listening to the two of you?
Well, we don't actually have a child. She has a daughter, and she's my stepdaughter. But when we do have a child, because that is on the cards, I have no idea what that kid's going to sound like. No clue.
It's gonna come out
Gonna have a
transatlantic.
chance. It will say American words with a British accent, or vice versa. I don't know. Poor kid,
Like
though. Before it's
interesting
even here, she's
inflections.
got no hope. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Let us know how it goes. We'll follow up in 5-6
Sure.
years, and we can have this talk
I'll be
again.
bringing that kid because my stepdaughter even she questions and she, bless her, she had a really bad day the other day because one of her school friends said that she was going to hell for not believing in God, and she, bless her, didn't sleep that night. And we had a good conversation, and then she woke up the following morning and she said, I've been thinking about questions to ask my friend. Bearing in mind she's 7, questions to ask my friend to help him stop believing in God. Which, I mean, that's not necessarily the way we should be pushing this, but it was just awesome that she came up to me with that and said, I'm going to be doing this. Okay, great.
Just
7.
makes me realize
She's
what a
7.
violent child I was.
How crazy is that? Oh,
Yeah,
Well, I was
well,
gonna say,
and-
like, I mean, we all had the hell trauma put into us at a young age, and like we
Yes.
understand where that comes from and what that feels
Right.
like. But it's so bizarre to have somebody as a kid who's raised as a non-believer to still go through instant trauma by what they're hearing.
Yeah.
Without any backstory, without any theology, without any brainwashing. They're terrified just because it's a terrifying notion
Yeah.
that seems
Yeah.
normal to most Christians.
Yeah,
It's not normal.
We spoke through it though, and she's
Yeah.
okay now. But I think
That's good.
because I want to go to a lot of conventions now that I'm here, because in the UK atheist conventions aren't a thing. And I actually met Jegaysus at one in Atlanta a few
Yes,
weeks
it was
ago.
lovely.
And I want to do more of that, but I would like to bring my child and my stepchild along too, because I feel like it's a good place for them to learn a lot about the community and the whole. I'm very big on the whole community aspect of this, like the social media community side of it, and interacting, because the more voices there are talking about how silly this is, and people like me saying on a basic level how silly this is, and then you lot saying, actually, we've got a bit of knowledge behind us and we can tell you why this is silly with these little points. The more that happens, the more this is going to, spread, and we won't be as non-believers, thought of in a negative way. It'll be just more normal to be normal,
I think it's also really important sometimes. So I've said this in different contexts, but when we treat something that on its face is silly as a valid sort of viewpoint that we're going to intellectually debate with, it legitimizes that belief, right? Now, I don't think that we should walk around telling every person with a religious belief, like, you're so dumb, I'm not going to talk to you. That's not what I'm getting at. But I do think there is a place for both of those things. I think there's a place for higher level, maybe not higher level, but more in the more brass tacks of Bible stuff or spirituality or whatever, versus also people that just say okay, well, if you weren't indoctrinated into this, if you didn't have this book, you would see how silly this looks just showing up, right? It's just silly.
Like Christians making fun of Mormons.
Right.
Like, the claims in Mormonism aren't that much crazier. I don't know why you think it's so bizarre.
Right. It's okay, so what is Paul if not a very early Joseph Smith. You know, like
He's so Joseph Smith. Oh my god.
People hate that.
Except for instead of having 18 wives, he had 0.
Yeah, so I mean, like some
That was
differences
his whole
for
thing.
Sure. I bet Joseph
Right.
Smith was like, I have
Sometimes
18
the
thorns in my
swing
side.
turn-
You what? Oh no, I didn't hear what Andrew said. What'd you say?
I said, I guess that pendulum just swings every,
Oh,
you
yeah.
swung it too far. From
It
0 to
straight
18,
repeats.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, something I've noticed so far is that when you talk about the way that you address things, and when you talk about how you feel when you hear things, it seems to be very light. It seems to have a lot of humor to it. It seems to be very fun for you. So, I mean, I think everyone here is a deeply passionate person. What do you do to keep things light? Keep things enjoyable for yourself?
I mean, I've always treated everything, even death, with humour, because that's just how I deal with things. I naturally find humour in everything. Even when, like, my first dog... I'm a massive dog lover, and when my first dog died, the only way I could deal with it was to make jokes about it, and I got him cremated, and when people came over after he died, I'd get the box out and just, like, sit the box on their lap, because that's what he would do. And that's the kind of thing that I do to deal with darkness. Like, I just make it, like, light wherever I can. I know that's weird, but that's just, if somebody hurts themselves, I try to find humour in it. To, like, I find humour just, like, shock someone. So you could be feeling really negative, but hear something very funny that you're not expecting, and then, like, your brain just works somehow, and it twists it, and you go, oh, yeah, that's right. And you forget about the pain. And I like to find humour to forget about the pain, whether that's physical pain or some sort of, thing that you're thinking about that upsets you. A bit of humour can, twist that, and you come back and you feel okay about it. That's just, I've always been that way. I've got 3 younger sisters, and whenever they were going through some kind of trouble, I would find humour in it to make it better for them. And that's just how I've always been.
Yeah.
I relate to that. After my grandfather died, the one thing that I found comfort in was George Carlin's bits about funerals.
There you go.
It was like, if you never heard his bits about funerals, he talks about how every aspect of it, dealing with the people walking up saying, "I'll do anything for you." He's like, "Great, you can paint my garage on Saturday. I'll put you all to work." He just has all these lines, and it almost felt like someone was sitting with me through a bad thing,
Right.
by hearing jokes about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I relate to that.
Good. Yeah, good.
I am usually the person making incredibly dark jokes. I'm not sure if people find them funny, but I find that it relieves some of the pressure in my own brain. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I don't know if we talked about this last time. I can't remember. I'm sorry, but when the whole Roe versus Wade thing came out, and of course, like, so many people were just totally devastated by it, understandably, me too. And I just remember, like, just making really dark jokes about it, but, like, it helped sort of what it, like, the pressure valve, you know what I mean? Like, you just, like, let it out a little bit. It's still awful what's going on, but, like, yeah, I don't know, I cracked a joke and, like, a couple people laughed or, whatever. It doesn't make it necessarily better, but it helps it from just being this sort of consuming source of stress all the time.
Right. Yeah, I get that.
Well, it's so odd because we spend all this time, all of us, feeling these big feelings that we have conditioned ourselves to think we just can't say to other people. But as if we just put the right spin on it rhetorically and make it a joke, it's fun. and we're allowed to do that. Even if it's a little awkward, we're allowed to do that. And there's a lot of healing through humor. So back to your channel for a second. So you have to deal with a lot of bad arguments. You deal with a lot of bad apologetics. What is the biggest leap that you have heard recently? Where it's just because bad apologetics is sometimes a bad argument.
Right.
It's sometimes a bad argument, but it's also sometimes just maybe not a bad logic, but a wild leap in a direction you never expected. Right. So can you think of a big leap you've heard recently?
Can I? Off the top of my head, no. But then, I mean, there's just so many very strange arguments. I had, what did I see earlier? That's something about there's no proof of macro evolution, and because there are no transitional fossils. That comes up fairly often, actually. And I look at it and go, like, this is, again, in my head, I can visualize exactly what I need to say. But I just struggle getting it out there, because I can, in my head, see that gradual change, and the fact that every fossil is a transitional fossil, because that's just how it works. That's how we go. So I see that a lot. I don't know. I just think all of the claims that I see, because there is nothing to back it up other than somebody asserting something they believe is the truth. That's all I get. That's all I focus on, because that's all I'm seeing, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I probably really explained that terribly.
Every fossil is a transitional fossil, and
Right.
so how do we say we don't have transitions? If it's a fossil and it ain't a finished thing, it's a transition point.
Yeah.
So that's them.
My most favorite thing is when people say, well, if humans evolved from apes, why do we still have apes?
Why they're still apes?
Like,
Yeah.
well, if dogs are the descendants of wolves, why do we still have wolves?
If man came
Yep.
from dirt,
Like-
why is there still dirt?
Right, exactly.
And like, speaking of dogs, pugs would not have any chance of living in the wild. So the fact that pugs exist are proof
Right.
of evolution enough. We have evolved them
Right.
to a point where they can barely survive.
To be clear, the fact that pugs exist is proof of a distant or an uninvolved God at the very least, right? Because those poor animals and what they've been through.
Right.
And I know that I've lost the moment because of the lag, but I have to say, like, my favorite would be if Americans came from the UK, then how do we have a British person here with us right now?
There you go.
How is that possible? Boom, atheists.
Yeah.
I just-
Checkmate. Checkmate.
Yeah,
My favorite thing about apologetics is at least they try. Well, it depends, I guess, on the branch of apologetics you're speaking with. But generally, they try to bring in critical thinking, which is appreciated. But that's also what makes it so insidious, because then they can sound really smart. Kind of like the Sean McDowell example I brought up. Like, he's dangerous in a way because he is so good at breaking down arguments. And as Andrew said, I think it's just for the sake of arguing, which is fine. But then on the very low end side of that, you have like a very Dunning-Kruger effect with these kids. It's usually kids and teenagers who hear their pastor go up against all these different things and say, you're wrong because, you're wrong because, you're wrong because. And they want to imitate it. And the best that they can ever pull out is, well, the Bible says. Well, you're wrong because the Bible says.
Right.
And the circular logic starts and they're stuck. They can't do anything else.
Yeah.
spin cycle forever.
The circular argument Bible thing really just gets me, because I don't know the Bible, and I've like only just recently started reading the Bible as like a series on my channel, and coming from a point of view of not knowing what things mean is so strange. But I would never, from the four chapters that I've read so far, I would never say that people came from Adam and Eve because it says so in the Bible. That's just the worst. That's the worst reasoning I've ever heard. Ever.
Absolutely.
Ever.
Or when you use one of them to like prove another one, like, well, in the New Testament, it mentions Adam and Eve when they're quoting a Hebrew scripture, so that proves that it was historic. Otherwise, they wouldn't have brought it up 1,000 years later.
Right.
Like, no, it just proves that they also read the same damn book.
Exactly. And I'm now seeing, well, further down, Adam and Eve also had daughters. So Cain didn't sleep with his mother. But now you're just saying that he slept with his sister, which I don't know if that's any better.
Oh my god. Okay,
Yep.
I don't know if this is what you're referring to, but there was someone who effectively did this argument recently. What do you meme? Which, first of all, what kind of name is that for an apologetics channel? But I digress. he did this argument where that's effectively his point, right? Like, well, no, it wasn't that they just reproduced with their mom or their dad. They had brothers and sisters. Like, that is your argument? That, like, it's just a different incest.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay. What?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like,
Too
and he's
much
saying it with his
step-bro
whole
porn.
chest.
That's what's going on.
Like, like,
I got
and
you.
with no,
Oh,
like,
really?
no, like, I don't even know what to say. Like, no, just the cognitive dissonance that exists because he's saying it seriously as if this is a justification for, like, how the world came to be, and it's like a-okay because it's like sister and brother, not mom and son. But like, okay, let's push that away. If we go anywhere and I say, no, it's fine, I'm not reproducing with my dad, I'm reproducing with my brother. Like, in what universe is anybody like, yeah, oh my god, I'm so silly me. You're right. Like,
You know, they
nowhere.
say it would be fine because God knew that was part of the plan, and it's forgiven incest because God saw that as the only choice. The only choice as compared to making another set of humans? Sorry, what?
Yeah.
Or just
Okay.
like making all the humans.
But-
I don't know.
Well,
It's very
it's
strange.
difficult because if it weren't for a very specific need to read the Bible in a very specific way to back up a specific logic for specific branches of Christianity, most of this stuff we would never have to hear about. Almost all of it, and that is so wildly frustrating. That like what you just said, I love what you said a second ago. It was like, if I reading these verses, I would never come to the conclusion this is trying to tell me that all people came from Adam and Eve. That's a
Right.
wild claim to make, and that makes me sympathetic to. I mean, I was raised this way to a certain extent. My first division between my parents and myself theologically was me going, "No, evolution makes perfect sense," and they're like, "No, it's crazy town," and
Wow.
that was the first big division, and that was like in elementary school, so it was early.
Wow.
And I remember I just remember the tension that happened there, but it would never have happened if they didn't believe that the only way this could be valuable is if it aligned with everything we know today about science. It had to mean that to be valuable. And if it didn't, then it falls apart, and so I have to spend... So if you're going to hold on to this, you got to tear down everything else to make a clear path for it.
Yeah.
And as the Bible gets more and more fragile in that view, more and more things get torn down for the sake of upholding that view.
Right.
And or try to get torn down is what I mean. And so if it weren't for that, if it weren't for like an interpretation of literature, most of us would never have to deal with this crap.
Yeah.
Right.
And the Bible being inerrant is such a good tool for like using your power, like it to manipulate people. If you present the Bible as this unaltered, perfect text, you can pick out the verses that you like and make people do whatever you say. But it's also the number one thing that shoots them in the foot, because as you said, as soon as one or two things gets chips away, they have to throw the whole thing out in that kind of mindset. They lose the entire validity of what their faith and their argument was in, because they put it in the Bible, not in the lessons itself. So best
So
control,
I was talking
worst control.
this last week with Dan McClellan, and we were talking about this very thing, right? That part of what, and I'm using evangelicals. I know it's not just evangelicals, but bear with me. The thing is that if you hold the Bible to be inerrant, nothing can possibly be wrong with it, and you actually want to, that's your commitment, right? It makes the Bible and your spirituality incredibly fragile, because the more rigid it gets, and I think this is what Andrew was getting at, the more rigid it gets, the less likely it's able to bend, right? It's like, this is, I don't know why I just thought of this, but like in California, because we have so many earthquakes, we have to build our buildings so that if it shakes, they don't just fall over, right? They can absorb some of this like shock and sort of move back and forth without like the foundations like breaking. Because otherwise, if we had a severe earthquake and it's so rigid, it's going to either go or it's going to go, but it's not going to stay up, right? So in similar ways, like if you maintain that the Bible is inerrant and you hold it to this like incredibly high, high standard, the more information you find that contradicts it and that it can't make space for, the more fragile it gets. And so one of the things which Jegaysus was just getting at, and I say, God, I feel like a broken record, is that like the strangest thing that Christianity taught to me was like, if one thing is wrong, it's all wrong. Like, do you want people to leave? Is that your goal? Because like, it's not particularly hard to find one thing that there's a talking donkey in the fucking book. Like, there's not like, and if you understand it as a literary device or as a sort of, I don't want to say not fable, but like as a story or as something that like isn't literal, then that's not a problem, right? You just, okay, this is part of a story and there's a reason they were using this, and we can get maybe a metaphor. Like, there's lots to it as opposed to just like, no, there was actually a donkey that was talking. Full stop.
Gotta believe it.
Like,
full stop.
And then and that's what happened to me with my deconversion, was like, you start pulling the thread, and if you've been taught the entire time that like, if one thing is wrong, it's all wrong, then it doesn't take much. I mean, you don't even have to get past like the first book. Like,
right.
And then people take that a step further, and there's King James onlyists out there who are like, not only is the Bible itself perfect, this one specific translation upon a translation from 400 years ago is the best.
Now, I will say that in this moment, and I'm not going to feel this way tomorrow, but in this moment, I think that is a pretty brilliant rhetorical device. Because if you decide the best version is one that barely any modern English speaker can barely fucking stand, or read, or like comprehend, and you can just like wing it, just like, because none of us know what this verse means in Old English. Well, not Old English, but you know, like in King Jamesian era English. Then that's pretty smart, because then it can just magically become whatever you need it to be to make it perfect.
Right.
That's kind of clever. Like if the goal is clever instead of integrity. That nails it, I think.
I also really love when people are KJV, when people are like so loyal to the KJV. My most favorite thing to tell them, just peas in their Cheerios, was that King James was a bisexual. So at best, I mean not at best, but like if you were just at best he was a bisexual, chances are he was pretty homosexual. And there's nothing wrong with that, but if you're going to be this like King James only and you are almost certainly against the LGBTQ, if that's you, I just need you to know the guy that did this Bible that you're adhering to was into dudes.
Multiple boyfriends.
That's funny.
We have so many receipts. We have so many receipts on that relationship. Like some would say too many.
You know what the apologists say to this? I have the apologist argument ready to go because I've done a series on this and they all come back.
Really?
Yeah, it's been proven that was actually just rumors started by the Catholic Church to undo King James, and they were jealous about the C of E coming up.
Unfortunately, historians would disagree.
Yes. I was like,
that's a pretty good tie-in to, like, as we talk about, like, more and more rigid, like, needing to hold these apologetical ideas. Like, Christianity needs to make more enemies as it becomes more rigid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because, like, it needs to have a problem with everything that is an opponent, because if the person that's speaking to you is already evil, then it doesn't matter how clever they sound.
Yeah.
Right. You can disregard them out of hand.
Yeah, immediately. And so, like, that's, like, so as Christianity evolved, it had to make more enemies, and, like, especially colonial Christianity, it had to make enemies of the Catholic Church. And so, like, KJV onlyists, you know, I'm imagining, based on our analytics, most of these people you're talking to are from the States. Having anti-Catholic arguments in the States is very valuable, because it's such a Protestant Christian space, right?
Right.
Like, and I think that's why right-wing politics has benefited so much from this foundational idea of this kind of Christianity, right? Mm-hmm. Because if this Christianity makes enemies of all the enemies that we want to keep our enemies, then it's the perfect religion for this party that we're trying to hold up.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and Catholicism in the United States by, like, Protestants is rejected out of hand. Like, they don't even know the first thing about Catholics, except for that they pray to the Virgin Mary, and that is enough for them to toss out everything. So if you say you're a Catholic, they don't even they don't care. They don't care what you have to say, not one word of it, because they think you're like a demon worshiper, effectively. Like, that's sort of how they equate it. And so there's like a bunch of like, it's just wild to me. And when, like, I remember,
Or they say they're
growing
not
up,
Christians.
Exactly.
Catholics aren't
Like,
Christians. They're Catholic.
But that's exactly what I was told growing up. I would be like, well, you know, my parents would tell me, like, no, Catholics are all going to hell. Basically, they're idol worshippers.
Oh, wow.
They're all going to hell because they don't subscribe to, you know, Jesus as God. Well, I mean, that's not even true. They do
They
subscribe
follow
to
the
Jesus
Pope,
as
not
God.
Jesus.
But, like, yeah, they obviously subscribe to Jesus, but they have this leader, like the Pope, and then they pray to Mary, and they pray to the saints, and these are all idolatrous practices, and they should know better, and they're not repenting, therefore hell.
Yep.
Wow.
That's it. And to give you a snapshot into Tennessee public schooling, when I was in high school, my English teacher, well, my first couple of English teachers were amazing people, but my one for my junior and senior year, same teacher, had us all read excerpts in our religion section of the class of Kingdom of the Cults. And if you're not familiar with this book, it's a wonderful little gem produced by apologetists and stuff, and it talks about all the cults in America.
I forgot about that.
Christians need to be aware of. Yeah, and one of the cults is Catholics. That's one of the cults. There's one of the cults is Catholics. Muslims is all one group. There aren't multiple kinds. There's only one, and they're all bad. They're all bad and brown, right? And then Hinduism is mentioned as a fringe cult because it's not mostly in the States. And then they mention like African spirituality. All of Africa, one spirituality, apparently. And,
Wow.
and that was how these ideas are presented. And so when you're taught that everyone else is the enemy, then all you're thinking when you hear that is, oh, that person who's wrong sounds really good right now. It's a shame they're wrong, though.
Right.
That's as far as it gets through your brain.
Or if you're raised evangelical, you think that they're being utilized by the devil to trick you and deceive you into leaving the true faith.
Yep.
And that's not just with other branches of religion. It's also like anything in school at all.
It's just a different way of life
like
here.
music.
The only reason I'm persuasive right now is because I'm being tempted. The only reason I'm persuasive is because I'm being tempted.
Yep, this is a test.
Wow.
Satan is trying to deceive me. This is a trick. It's a trap. I mean, and it's that way with other religions.
Wow.
It's that way with other denominations. It's that way with anything in history that doesn't add up. It's that way with anything in science that doesn't add up. These are all agents of Satan trying to entrap you. It's a fucking cult.
Creationists who think that the fossils of dinosaurs were put here on Earth by Satan to deceive everyone into evolution.
Lord, have mercy.
That's
Or
a
the
lost
people.
Word.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, or the people that then say that. God, this lag. That then say, "Oh, no, the Bible is true actually because there are chariot wheels in the Red Sea."
Yeah.
That was started on a satire site.
No.
Anyway,
That
Andrew,
parody
please.
is so good. And- so there was this moment in high school with my wrestling coach and this other guy who was the same year as me. We were both juniors or seniors at the time, and he was talking about, and I was a very specific branch of like Christian adjacent. I wasn't necessarily Christian, but I don't know, things were happening, and he was having some argument. It was a bad argument about the evils of religion because Islam is itself, and that I didn't appreciate it and I didn't like it. And my wrestling coach joined in, agreeing, saying, yeah, you can't like dismiss all ideas of God. And I thought we were on the same page for a second, until he said, we'll get deceived and start believing in these things like evolution. And I was like, you took a turn on me, you dog-legged it, I thought it was a straight shot. And then it's the first time I ever heard someone say that scientists made up dinosaur bones as part of the liberal agenda. That was the first time I ever heard anybody say
So
that.
bizarre. I've heard it
The
too many
liberal
times.
agenda of Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Oh,
Wow. It's so weird that
I really don't.
that's not
okay.
something that happens in British schools. We weren't.
bet
The only
not.
religious thing we had was like maybe bringing some tins of food at harvest. That was like our religious thing. That was it. We didn't have any of like the talk of Bible in school or anything like that.
Lucky you.
Well, I'm
See,
glad
so
you
that's-
escaped that as a child.
So you never prayed at the pole? That
No.
never
Oh,
happened?
God.
I
There
don't
was
even
no-
know what you just said.
Right.
Prayed at the pole?
Just praying to the maypole. Just kidding. No, there was this thing that evangelicals
Oh, no.
did in high school where they would be like meet you at the pole, and then you would like pray for all the like sinning heathens at your high school to be saved, and for prayer to be reinstated in school, and for God to be the king of everything. Oh yeah, and I had to do it.
And of course, the place they picked to do this is by
The
no
American flag?
coincidence under the American flag, the pole being the
What?
flagpole.
No
So,
way.
right under the greatest country's propaganda tool, you're also praying that everyone.
I
in the
have no
school
idea
become
how Christian nationalism has made such a huge surge. It's a mystery.
So weird.
Such a mystery.
This is proof how dumb I am, because it wasn't until just now that I was just like, oh yeah, that's where people start associating the American flag with Christian prayer. That makes sense.
Oh,
That
yeah.
just clicks for me right now. So
And the whole one nation under God bull. That's in there.
God- oh.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just that. We picked the time so that it would happen while people were getting off or getting onto the bus, so they would watch. They'd be able to see
was
us
very public.
breaking their
Peak
mortal
embarrassment.
souls
Exactly.
into school or on the way out. It was. I mean, you had to like arrange it. We were like little planners and activists for all the wrong reasons
Yep.
at a very early age. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So if you ever want to know why like ex-evangelicals
wow.
and like ex-Christians are so goddamn loud now, it's because that level of crazy ass indoctrination was constantly shoved down our
Right.
throats and spoon-fed to us from the time we opened our little peepers. Yeah, at least that's why I'm
Facts.
so loud.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense because back in where it's not so forced upon you as a child back in the UK, we're not very vocal about being non-believers because like everybody else is they just assume you're all in the same boat. So
Yeah, that's
this makes a load of
That's
sense.
a very peaceful way to live.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, go ahead and say your thing, Jessica.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my thing. It's not my thing. I have an appointment in 30 minutes, so I have to hop off and get going. But y'all continue the conversation if you would like. John, sorry I have to jump out. It was lovely meeting you in semi-person. Thank you for being here.
Sure.
And make sure by the end of the show, I know that you all will, let everyone know where they can find you so they can support your work.
Will do. Will do.
Yeah.
All
So
right,
let's
y'all.
check in. Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome. Bye.
Wait, so what you were saying a second ago sorry we cut you off, we were talking about, like in Britain, how people just kind of assume everyone else is in the same boat. I think that was an interesting concept because I assume a lot of that has to do with like political standings. So
Yeah,
our
I don't even know
at
if it
least
is
culture
political.
is so loud in politics.
Sure. I don't feel there is still a massive divide, I think, between the political world and the religious world in the UK. The Queen, through ceremony, has to do all the religious stuff. But when you watch her doing it, it doesn't look like she is doing it because she believes it. It's almost like she's just doing it because that's what
She's
she
not on
has to do.
fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Dude.
there isn't really that much of a political / religious thing. It is very separated.
Exactly. That's good. I mean, so like when you have people running for prime minister, for example, are they in the middle of campaigning? Do they say like, "Oh, this is what I believe in. This is the church I go to," or is that
No.
just like?
Yeah, there's none of that.
Interesting.
I couldn't tell you what religion Boris Johnson is, if he's anything. I have no idea. And he doesn't. I don't even know if he is religious. I know that he went to a school that was affiliated with a religion, but I don't think I don't think he has a religion, or if he does, he keeps it very.
Here we have
very
it
personal.
such an opposite way. Like, Trump was never religious. Trump has always been a secularist his entire life. He would be outspoken about that. And then as soon as he wants to run for president, I'm Christian. I've always believed in Jesus. Because it's not only do we not mention it, it's that you have to mention it, or else you can't get anywhere in politics.
That's crazy.
Disturbing.
Yeah, it's just so different.
And that's one of the reasons that this particular past election, well, the one with Donald Trump, not this past, well, this one as well, I suppose, was so strange for a lot of Americans, especially younger ones, like 35 and under, was because we had been raised up in a world where usually all of the religious convictions seemed fairly legitimate. Like, it seemed pretty, like, okay, these people seem to actually believe this stuff, or we believed it too, and so when they said it, we just believed them when they said it. But then, when Donald Trump, like, of all people, when we have seen his whole career, where he was a joke in most households growing up, where he was, like, an example of just, like, the worst kind of person, and then our parents would vote for him as an example of what God wanted, all the cards fell. For so many people. That's why so many people that, like, that's the reason so many people left the church prior to the pandemic. And that's the reason it was so easy to leave during the pandemic, because it was a final excuse. Like, if you watch TikTok, you watch evangelical TikTok, Deconstruction TikTok, so many people left the church after Trump got elected. Because that's when the cards officially fell, especially for a lot of women. Because this person who is so obviously a terrible, evil, overt misogynist was just now standing in front of churches holding a Bible after tear gassing people.
Oh, wow.
And that was... That's how the cards fell for so many people here in the States, at least this round, I think. Jegaysus, would you agree with that?
I completely agree. I think there was a huge push into deconstruction by people who finally just looked around and were like, what? Because not only did it radicalize the right more, it became... once again, even more religious, even though it was kind of like, it was unspoken rule that evangelicals and the Republican Party are tied together. It got to a point where now you have people like Red Locke standing up there preaching Q conspiracies instead of sermons. Yeah. And so people started to realize, like, this is something worse than I thought it was. And so even though that they continue to go to church out of comfort or out of tradition or out of community, it's something that they would still continue to do, even if they didn't believe. And now there's just no way to reconcile not believing and still showing up into this place where they're getting yelled at about Trump.
And do you see it continuing to go down the route of we're going to get more nuns, non-believers?
It's going to get worse.
Oh, really?
Oh, non-believers?
Yeah, non-believers, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have more of a divide, and, I mean, we're already, for the first time, there's more non-believers and others than there are Christians. But it's just like spiritualists still count, or deists still count. But I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, because I've noticed a huge upswing in Gen Z. They are extremely religious, like more than their parents, and a lot of their parents are even... just like humanist or just not anything. And these kids are getting radicalized on the internet to become like little David Laddings. And I think that's going to be a huge problem. And then now we also have this rhetoric getting pushed between anti-abortion and anti-trans laws and all these things that are playing out on the main stage again. I think more people are going to pick sides and just use like their phobias to dig themselves into religion deeper when they might not have before.
Right.
I think we just need a rule that there should be no religion in politics, something like a First Amendment or something. I don't know.
Yeah. That's that's there, right?
Amend means you can change it. So we could like put one in or something, right? That's not
well, I mean,
It is crazy.
But it should actually be like a law that like during campaigns you cannot mention your private faith. Like that's a law I would make tomorrow.
You know, it's complicated because when we look at just the basic trends of human history, generation as a concept doesn't technically exist, but when you look at like large swaths of birth populations, there is a swing between where people look for value towards the future or towards the past, like traditional tribal value or more future value, and that's a very normal human thing. I think it's just so much more complicated now that every single direction a generation could look is now a political talking point.
Right.
So like, and it just makes it more messy and more loaded. I think that's the word I was looking for. It makes it more loaded because people can't just. You talk about David Ladding. That was a great example of just somebody who was raised in a time where there was no such thing as the opportunity to privately express anything,
Right.
or where that was encouraged, or where everything was always on the internet. If you do it well, people will see it on the internet. You know it's good on the internet if it's going to get enough views. It's good on the internet if it gets enough views, if it has the right emotional cadence, if you have the right tear in your eyes, if it has the right shock to it. And we're watching people feel like the way that their internalized personal ideas can only be legitimized as children if it's performed well for strangers. And so I don't know what's going to happen now, right? Because if generations used to have the comfort away from the entire world seeing everything you say and taking a clip of it, and now everyone sees everything all the time. Well, it's almost like there was a special on that, and it was the whole Bo Burnham thing. Like it was just.
Oh, you're talking about I thought you meant a documentary, but yes, I'll accept Bo Burnham as an answer.
Can I interest you in everything all the time? Just a little bit of everything, all of it.
Just a little bit of everything.
So I don't. I mean, so it is kind of natural that humans will traditionally become more religious every few birth periods, and then all of a sudden won't be. That's just how we cycle out. I don't know what's going to happen now that it's all on the internet and it's all deeply tied to a political party.
Yeah,
it's gonna be craziness, is what it's gonna be. Now that you have your stepdaughter, but now that you have, like, say, a child around, how, I know you said after her friends and family were like, you're gonna go, not friends and family, but, you know, that girl at school or whoever, told her she was gonna go to hell. Outside of that, how are you going to respond? And I see this question to non-believers all the time, so you can slap me if it's dumb. But how would you respond if one day she wanted to go to church and become a Christian?
Well, she's already said that she wants to start reading the Bible just because she wants to know what's in there. With open arms, I would say go and try it, because if there is something convincing enough to convert you from non-belief to belief, then I want to know what that is. I mean, she's 7 years old. Fortunately, both of her parents are boys, so she is very good at thinking about things. So I think we'll be okay. But it, you know, we've said, she came to me the other day and said, I'm going to start reading the Bible. I've got a Bible at my dad's house. And I went, okay, go and read it. She got gifted it by,
she can read at 7. I mean, like at 7, like Bible content.
I think she will ask what some of it means, or what the words are.
Hopefully.
But she can read. She can read really well. So yeah,
all right.
we're all for it.
I mean, yeah, that's the right answer, I think, because, like, I get kind of, I don't know, I get kind of turned off when people are like, absolutely not until they're 18. And I'm like, you should be wanting the pursuit of knowledge, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be okay. Demonizing
she
knowledge
asks
is,
the right questions
worrisome.
now as well. So
good.
Yeah.
Like, religious literacy will most likely still remain a huge connection point between us and other cultures around the world. Like to understand the world that people are raised in and how they're taught to think, how they're taught to think about the world is so. Because that's what religion really is. It's the way you perceive information and the way you perceive your place in the world. You know?
Right.
And that's it's good that she is open. My daughter is probably on the other side of that. She's like, well, you know what? Maybe all of them are real. That's fine. Just like maybe like all of them, whatever. That's more of her position on things. And it's just been really fun to watch her go, prayer is dumb because God doesn't do anything when you pray. Okay? And then like a year later, she's like, let me teach you this prayer I know. It's like, okay. And so like she's just, and it's been so fun to watch.
Right.
And what do you? So you're someone that adds levity to all of this. You know, you bring us back to the level of, but isn't that silly? You bring us back to that, and that's part of it. And that's so important in all of this. How would you encourage us to keep our sanity as we keep going down into the deep dark holes?
Sure. Just I always like to take a step back and just read a conversation as though I'm not part of the conversation, and looking at it from another person's perspective. Try and look at it from like the person's perspective that you're speaking to, and how they would read your responses if you were them, if that makes sense. So you kind of go, oh, this person could potentially be coming across in an attacking way. I'm a big fan of Anthony Magnabosco and his street epistemology, and the way he will reiterate back what someone said, just slightly turning it to make it a bit, almost simplifying it to go, okay, this is what I think that you're saying, before going straight back in with a rebuttal. Because if you can vocalize what they're saying, and make sure you're 100% correct on what they're saying, you can then go, well, I don't accept this because A, but also it might make them go, no, I don't think that is what I'm saying. And then they will question, they could potentially question their position as well. But if you just take that step back, I find that help. I mean, and I'm not telling you how to do what you do. This is just how I do it. I take a step back, and I observe from a different perspective. And I find that usually works for me. But also having a reason that something is silly. I don't just go, well, that's silly, and then walk off. I go, well, that's silly because this, and I know you both do this anyway, but, you know, someone who doesn't do that should have a reason why. Don't just go, nah, rubbish, and walk off. You go, not acceptable because, you know. But I love what you both do. The quick consumable content on TikTok is, I am not good at that, and I love like seeing what you do and just adding like I love it. I'm just bigged you both up.
I'm such the opposite. I could never do long form content because I'm like, ugh, my brain doesn't work that way unless I have other people to like bounce off of.
Sure. I just enter into like this like theoretical spiral, and it just becomes a word salad and stops being useful for everyone. Don't nod that quickly, Jegaysus.
No, I do the same thing. I do the same thing. I get it. I was nodding because you're speaking to my soul.
Yeah, I understand.
Now, there's something you said a moment ago that I think is so interesting, because I'd never heard it said like this before, or I've never received it when someone said it, I guess. I never like understood it. You talked about a tactic that is used in like apologetic circles and in debate circles, but in like an opposite way. Usually, you talk about destabilizing the conversation, but when you destabilize it, you encourage questions.
Yeah.
Instead of put people on the defensive. And I don't know why I've never thought of that. Like you're talking about actively destabilizing the tension, and when apologists do it, they're trying to destabilize the person they're speaking to, so they lose confidence.
Yeah.
Right. You're basically giving everyone a break to think about things, and that's really clever. I had never thought about that. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. I love it, and that's how I'd like to have even conversations with family about regular stuff. If like you get in heated discussions with your family, that's just what family do. And if you put it to them that way, it also diffuses the situation. It's a great way to live your life. It's just a good way to live.
Sure. I need to get better at that.
Now that seems like a positive note that we could close on right there. It's just
there you go.
That's something we can all leave with. Is like, destabilize in a way that lets people ask good questions instead of making people lose their confidence.
Yeah, right.
That sounds wonderful. So where can people find you if they want to hear more from you? They're listening to this or watching this on YouTube. Where can they find you?
Sure. So my YouTube channel is youtube.com/theskeptic, and tick is with Tick. It's just a play on words. because I'm skeptical about things, but also I'm British and we use a tick instead of a check. So that's basically where the name came from. The SkepTick on YouTube.
Very nice. And so would you be willing to be on again if we're going to have more conversations about things like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the lag is my fault, so I will make sure that I get this sorted. But yes, no, absolutely. I love doing stuff like this. And I want to meet in person as well. So go to conventions, come and hang out at conventions.
Yeah, conventions. What was I gonna say? I want to thank you first of all for coming on. I love you. I could listen to your voice all the day.
Stop it.
It's soothing. It's very ASMR. And I love nothing more than, like, you know, religious topics. And then if you can mix ASMR sounding lovely velvet voices into it, I'm there all day.
Thank you very much.
So everyone, I do recommend that you go check out his content. And then as well, you already know how to find all of us, but Queen of Heathens is gone. All of our links are in the thingamabobber. Jegaysus, Red Sage, all that stuff. If you can, please go ahead and leave a rating over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Whoever has a rating system, make sure to just go ahead and check those off. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe. Do all the regular things that people tell you to do because gay Jesus told you to.
And isn't that really what it's all about?
That's what it's about.
That's what it's all about.
So, again, thank you everyone who listened in, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.